This is the U.S. History Unit 3 Modified Test recording. I'm going to be going through the test and reading the questions and the answer options for you. At the start of the test, you'll notice that there is a list of tips for things that you need to do during the test. Make sure that you read through the questions, answers those that you know right away. Make sure that you copy what you're answering on paper. This saves your work if you lose power or internet. It also records what you put on your first attempt, so when you take it a second time, you don't make the same mistake twice if you miss that question. Click Save as you go. Copy and paste essay responses that you've prepared ahead into the test. You receive the questions for short answers ahead of time, so you will be preparing those before you go into the test. Review notes for questions that are unfamiliar, and use textbooks for questions that aren't addressed in notes. Read over the test once more before submitting, and then click Submit. Remember, you're clicking Save as you go and then click Submit at the end. Do not exit the test before you're done. A lot of students actually create test submission errors, and then their test is spoiled and they cannot get a grade for it because they think that they can start the test, save it, exit out, and come back into it later. You cannot do that. You can't get back in. It will use your second attempt if you try to go back in to the test if it doesn't lock you out completely. So make sure that when you sit down to take the test, you're ready to start the test and begin. There are 27 multiple choice questions, and there's one very short answer and two typed response answers at the end, also considered short answers. Our first question here is, which was not one of the causes of the Great Depression? Was it risky banking practices, severe drought, or excessive income taxes? Question 2, which of the following caused the stock market crash, which then led to the Great Depression during the 1930s? The practice of day trading on the stock market, government investing citizens' money back into the stock market, or people purchasing stocks using money they had borrowed to pay for them. Number 3, what happened in the Great Plains when severe drought followed the removal of native grasses? Was it a wheat crop that was smaller, but most farmers made some profit? The government nationalized the farms and planted trees? Or strong winds blew away topsoil and created the Dust Bowl? Number 4, what caused the Great Plains farmers called Okies to leave their lands and migrate to California? Improved subsidies offered to California farmers, the desire to pioneer new farming methods in the West, or was it difficult conditions caused by the effects of a drought? Number 5, which of the following statements is true about the impact of the Great Depression on American people? You can use the image above this question to help you answer this as well. The Great Depression left large numbers of Americans without jobs or food. Immigration to America remained the same during the years of the Great Depression. The Great Depression had no impact on relations between whites and African Americans. Number 6, how did Herbert Hoover's beliefs about business and government affect the economy? Hoover believed the government should take a strong and immediate action, which angered businesses. Hoover's belief in non-intervention kept the government from responding quickly and deepened the Depression. Hoover thought business should seek direction from government, but most refused. Number 7, what technique did Franklin Roosevelt use to keep American public informed? Informal speeches or fireside chats on the radio, daily press conferences that were reported in papers across the nation, or monthly State of the Union addresses. Question number 8, which of the options below showed that the government under the New Deal was committed to helping needy families and those who could not work and provide for themselves? Was it the Share the Wealth program, the Laissez-Faire program, or Social Security and Civilian Conservation Corps programs? Number 9, which agencies created during the New Deal are still in existence today? The Civilian Conservation Corps and Homeowners Loan Corporation, the Agricultural Adjustment Agency and the National Recovery Administration, or the last option, Tennessee Valley Authority and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Number 10, what was the major criticisms of the New Deal? Many Democrats believed that too much power was being concentrated in Washington. Some people said the legislation had not gone far enough, and others thought it created too much government. Or the last option, most socialists believed the economy would eventually straighten itself out and legislation wasn't necessary. Number 11, what were the key objectives of New Deal legislation? Relief for the people in need, recovery for the economy, and reform to prevent future problems, assistance for failing businesses, buyouts for banks, and unemployment insurance, or bailouts for banks, rescue of people's savings, and stabilization of the monetary system. In question 12, you're going to read the passage given above. According to this document above, what were two effects of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal policies on the nation? You're going to read this portion independently and then put your answer down here in this area underneath the spell checker. You can use the spell checker if you like. The passage reads, "But was the New Deal answer really successful? Did it work?" Other scholarly experts almost uniformly praise and admire Roosevelt, but even the most sympathetic among them add a number of reservations. The New Deal certainly did not get the country out of the Depression, says Columbia's William Leuchtenberg, author of Franklin D. Roosevelt and the New Deal. As late as 1941, there were still 6 million unemployed, and it was really not until the war that the army of the jobless finally disappeared. Some of the New Deal legislations was very hastily contrived and planned, says Williams College's James McGregor Burns, author of 2-volume Roosevelt's biography. Duke's James David Barber, author of The Presidential Character, notes that Roosevelt was not too open about his real intentions, particularly in the court-packing episode. After all the criticisms, though, the bulk of expert opinion agrees that Roosevelt's New Deal changed American life substantially, changed it permanently, and changed it for the better. While the major recovery programs like the NRA and the AAA have faded into history, many of Roosevelt's reforms like Social Security, stock market regulation, minimum wage, insured bank deposits are now taken for granted. But what actually remains today of the original New Deal? Alexander Hurd, 64, who is retiring soon as Chancellor of Vanderbilt University, remembers working in the CCC as a youth, remembers it as a time when the new president restored a sense of confidence and morale and hope being the greatest of all. But what remains, in a sense, says Hurd, what remains of the New Deal is the United States. Question 13. Which most clearly contributed to the rise of dictators in Europe and Asia during the 1930s? Economic crisis, confusion and disagreement over borders, popular interest in the showing of military strength. Number 14. Which leader is not accurately matched with his country? Hitler, the leader of Germany, Hirohito, the leader of Japan, Mussolini, the leader of Austria. Number 15, what actions on the part of Germany and Italy created conflict and led to requests for the League of Nations to intervene? The refusal to repay debts, the capture, imprisonment, and torture of soldiers from other countries, or the invasion of other countries to gain new territory? Number 16, what was the U.S. reaction to the beginning of war in Europe in 1939? Congress encouraged the League of Nations to provide assistance. The United States began mobilizing troops in anticipation of entering the war. Later, Congress stressed isolationism and passed 5 neutrality laws. What program did Franklin Roosevelt develop to provide supplies to the English in spite of U.S. neutrality laws? Borrow benefit, cash and carriers, or lend-lease? What famous words did President Roosevelt use to describe the attack on Pearl Harbor? A day that will live in infamy, nothing to fear but fear itself, transformation of a lie into truth. Number 19, what was the U.S. response to the bombing of Pearl Harbor? Bombing Tokyo, joining the Allies and declaring war on Germany, declaring war on Japan and joining the Allies. Number 20, how did the War Productions Board play a role in coordinating American war efforts during World War II? It was the government agency that worked with corporations to produce what the military needed. It was the agency that determined when and where troops would be dispatched. It was the board responsible for government production of the materials needed to fight the war. The telegram above was sent as a response to the blank. Which event? So read through the telegram here. It says start of World War II, attack of Pearl Harbor, or passage of a law to ban Japanese immigration. The telegram reads, New York, December 7th, 1941, His Excellency the President of the U.S., Washington, D.C. We, the American citizens of Japanese descent of New York City and the vicinity, join all Americans in condemning Japanese aggression against our country and support all measures taken for the defense of the nation. Signed, the Tozai Club of New York, 323 West 108th Street, New York City. Number 22. Which two U.S. commanders led troops in the European and Pacific fronts? Dwight Eisenhower and Douglas MacArthur, Chester Nimitz and John Nance Garner, Dwight Eisenhower and George C. Marshall. 23. Which U.S. victory in the Pacific Theater took the Japanese by surprise? Midway, Tokyo, or Bataan? 24. D-Day, June 6, 1944, began the final drive of World War II in the European theater. What event does D-Day refer to? The Battle of the Bulge, the bombing of Stalingrad, or the Normandy invasion? Number 25. Why did the U.S. government require rationing of some goods during World War II? To provide supplies and food to the war refugees in Europe, to increase the demand for certain items to increase the profit made by selling them around the world, or to decrease the chance of supply shortages and to provide supplies for the U.S. military. What did the double V mean for African Americans? Participation in the military and victory over discrimination, victory and vengeance, or victory in the war overseas and over Jim Crow at home. Question 27. What was the original purpose of the above image in which was a famous poster from World War II? To encourage women to begin working in heavy industry fields to support the war effort, make role models of women who ferried supplies into combat areas during the war, or to encourage women to become Red Cross nurses during World War II. Number 28. Why are there no U.S. civilian deaths indicated on the chart above? Everyone that died in the U.S. was not a citizen, the total number dead was not able to be counted, or no fighting happened on U.S. soil, so there were no civilians killed. We're going to pick up the reading of the short answers on the second recording. It will just be a short one. So look for your second recording link for Unit 3 test.